It is Brian White Day, and I'm so happy because when Brian White is on, the stock usually goes up. And today, that is absolutely the case. Brian, you know this is all about you. The folks are just waiting, for your, I don't know what happens, some energy. They're calling it animal spirits. I think that might be you. Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm a head in a jar, so this whole simulation is based around me. So there you go.
All right. Okay, cool. So, but anyway, the stock is up today, and you think that it might have something to do with version 13 and all of the great news coming out of the community about their rides with version 13. Would I be incorrect in stating that?
There are a bunch of factors. I'll list the other ones first, then we'll get to version 13. I think some investors have seen the Cybercab developments and think that's very bullish. I think a lot of autonomy investors are seeing version 13. Yes, we'll get to that. But it's also the robotics play, it's the AI play, it's a bunch of things. But version 13, for anyone paying attention, and analysts have started to pay attention, a lot of these analysts are looking at the stock and saying, is Tesla going to crack this and when?
Mhm.
And they're no longer saying if, they're saying when. So if it's a question of when, they need to move before it happens.
Right.
And if you watched what happened with all the versions, 12, they kept getting better, but 13 was a generational leap, just as 12 was from 11. 11 worked in some places, not very well everywhere. 12 worked in a whole lot of places and really well. And 13 is a generational leap. So I got 13.1.2 last week. I got 13.2.2 last night,
Mhm.
and it just keeps closing the few remaining gaps.
So talk to us, Brian, because there's a bunch of these videos out there, and we trust some of the people that give the advice more than others. I mean,
Mhm.
Cook, I think most people really think that he's straight up and gives it, without too much nonsense. But I think that's also true for you, that you would be, you know, honest enough to tell us, where the problems still lie, but also enthusiastic about the things that are being done right. So lay it on us, Mr. White.
Sure. I would say that's fair. Chuck Cook, I would say, is very good at pointing out the flaws without being rude about it, without being negative or pessimistic. I'd say Dirty Tesla does a great job too, of just pushing it to the limits. So yeah, I put out a video last night, and I put out a companion video for my supporters across the different platforms where I'm supported, of the entire unedited video. And I did that last week with that video as well. And I'll keep doing that. Not very many people choose to watch it,
Mhm.
but it's there so you can see that I am not cutting out the bad parts. You don't want the whole drive. It's,
Right,
you know,
right.
it's too long.
Boring.
It's boring. But if you think I'm leaving something out, go check. So what is it doing? Well, the first thing it did was stopped and then went correctly at the flashing red. That was a problem on version 12. Both versions of 13 have nailed it consistently. Got to the no right on red, and it stopped and it crept, and we're like, uh-oh, is it going to run it? And then the light turned green as it was going, and I was like, well, I don't know if that's a fair test. And I said as much in the video. Well, I
Yeah.
went back and ran it again in the dark again,
Mhm.
and that time it held just fine.
Hmm.
And what others pointed out is it probably saw the light changing for the other direction, and that could very well be the case.
I have seen a couple of people mention that it's creeping before the light changes, just like humans.
Because some humans do that. It handled construction zones. It handled my weird six-way intersections. The automatic speed was a little bit better than before, not perfect, but better. I didn't disengage except when I needed to because I changed where I was going.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, and of the five parking attempts, it correctly parked twice,
Mhm.
uh, or no, I guess it correctly parked once.
Okay.
The other times it was like at the supermarket where it never parked before. It was like, there's a spot, and it parked crooked over the line in a disabled spot.
Yeah.
Okay,
See, it must have gotten my video.
it must have. But what I said in my video is, if you're dropping someone off, that's fine.
Yes,
If
right,
you're a taxi dropping someone off, that's fine. You will be out of the spot within a minute.
right.
Uh, then there was, and then other times it was like, oh, I'm going to not parallel park in a parallel parking
Oh,
spot and
oh,
be halfway in the road.
hmm,
Now, these are all things that are being addressed. And then I
right.
couldn't get it to unpark. And helpfully, everyone in the comments, in the replies to my post said, have you have you enabled that feature? Because you have to enable that feature. And
Oh,
so yeah, I had to turn off pin to drive and then I could enable it. And now I can go back and test some more.
okay.
But
Because
this is
I saw a couple of parallel parking jobs that were, that I was very, very impressed. And what it caused me to think about, Brian, is, I even commented on X that my dad had this amazing ability to judge distance. I mean, his whatever you call that. There's a name for that. But anyway,
spatial awareness.
spatial awareness. My mom would even say that when he was driving, the car commonly breathed in when necessary. That's how close he would get. But when you think about FSD, it's got cameras where all the points of contact would be. It can get a lot closer to cars than a human would ever contemplate getting.
The bigger thing I noticed that I hadn't seen other people talking about was I tell you, Randy, the cameras are seeing better in the dark now. So
Wow.
when you get a chance to see it, and I assume because it's the same stack for autopilot, whatever version you guys are on out there, next time it is dark, you tell me, are the cameras looking better? Because I really think they are. They were see you could see in the blinker camera, you could see the clouds in the night sky. That I guess once I looked, I could see them, but I certainly didn't notice them with the
Yeah.
naked eye.
Huh.
And why not have supervision?
Right, of course. Absolutely. All right. So
I've been told many times that I require adult supervision. So
yeah, right. Yes, I've heard this about you.
mhm.
So there is, the speculation, of course, goes crazy. So we have James Dama on yesterday with a first interview in quite a while, and James was very enthusiastic and seemed to feel like, in terms of him thinking about it, in terms of the computer side of it. So that when you and I think about it, I think, or at least for me, I think about it very mechanistically. I don't then switch my brain over into what's going to happen in the stack that's going to, the next things that are going to be taking place because I'm not a computer scientist. In fact, I'm a social scientist. I don't know if that even counts. What what so anyway, he was very enthusiastic and felt like it was really now just really, boom, 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 and we're there. What are you feeling about timing at this point after playing with the version 13?
On version 11, if you told me it's going to be another 5 to 10 years, I'd have said, I believe you.
Hmm.
On versions 12, if you told me it's going to be another 3 to 5 years, I'd have believed you. On version 13, if you're trying to tell me it's going to be another 3 to 5 years, I find that very difficult to believe. I don't think it will. I think the only thing that's going to hold it back from becoming unsupervised is the long tail of testing.
Mhm.
Tesla might want 1 billion miles. It might want 5 billion miles to just be sure because we don't know what's in the box. And in the box is all the outcomes possible. And we need to make sure that those edge cases are all solved. And it just takes time to accumulate enough of them to make sure you've got it going. Now, here's the important thing to remember. The competition's coming, Randy. It's always on the way. The competition recently said that, yes, we are now also going to be using end-to-end neural nets. Great. But when it comes to that last step of validation, it's going to take you a decade to
Yeah,
validate.
yeah.
You don't have the data. You don't have the miles being racked up every minute of the day the way Tesla does. So even the value of Tesla's shadow mode training is worth more than all of the other fleets combined.
Yeah, so there's been quite a few. We had one of them noticed yesterday, but there was some 2 weeks ago, and of jobs being posted by Tesla, and there's a couple of different kind of jobs, but all over the country where they're saying we need
Mm.
people to be drivers. And it sounds as if maybe these drivers are going to be kind of sitting in the chair, letting the vehicle, like, they're, I'm a little more of a nervous Nelly when it comes to this thing. So I probably intercede a little faster than maybe you do. And maybe you intercede faster than Larry Goldberg does because he's driven, a bajillion miles on the, well, of course, you've driven a lot of miles too. But anyway, different people have different stress levels in terms of when they're going to intervene. So I'm thinking maybe these people will at least partially be hired with the idea that they're just not going to intervene. I mean, it's just like you better not intervene until you're uh, you know uh, you know
Inches from collision.
inches from contact. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's what's needed. Last night, well, even before last night, on Saturday, we drove hundreds of miles. We drove probably a total of 4 or 5 hours. And my goal was to not intervene.
Uh-huh.
And only once did I intervene because I felt the speeds we were at were inappropriate for the weather. And I can see that traffic is slowing down ahead and we are not slowing down. I'm sure it would have been fine, but I have my family in the car.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
not let's
Yeah.
not put them in danger. But the whole drive, here's the big change. On version 11, if you said the word rain too loud, it would disengage
Oh.
because it was so eager to be blinded.
Oh.
On version 12, I'd say it reduced by 2/3.
Hmm.
And on Saturday, it was nasty wet. It wasn't pouring, it was just nasty. And it was the kind of spray that comes up off other vehicles. And not once did it give me a camera occluded message.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, how could that be? So I pull up the cameras on the highway
Hmm.
and you can see the cameras are not looking good. But here's the thing. If you were to take just snapshots, there's a fraction of a second when there's a crystal clear view.
I see.
You
Yeah.
and I can't see that. The
Yeah.
car can. It
Yeah.
can see between the raindrops because
So to
it
speak.
can see faster than we can. Because we look at 24 frames a second for a movie and we think, yeah, that's smooth. That's
Mhm.
uninterrupted.
Mhm.
Where the computer would watch it and go, wow, you guys really watch strobe light shows. That's very strange. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
when you say looking between the raindrops, I would again, not being a computer scientist, I would call it that they can combine visuals to get the total picture because they can look in history and look at
Yeah. I've
multiple
got
multiple
I've
slide shots or shots. Yeah.
I've got 60% of a picture in one frame
Yeah.
and a different, if it's over less than half a second,
Mhm.
that's a complete picture. Put it
Right.
together, I can see.
Right.
And that tells me that the hardware doesn't need to be up. The cameras are fine. The placement is fine. So this is my confidence that this will be solved on the existing hardware 4 is higher than ever. And hardware 3, I maintain that anyone outside of Tesla who tells you it can't be done is guessing and guessing pessimistically because they don't know, they can't know, and it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah, okay. So some of the things that are still people are contemplating since we're hearing words from like the Tesla X account themselves saying it's coming sooner than we think. Some people are contemplating, of course, that Elon's earlier statements and the company's earlier statements that we might be looking at Robotaxi this summer is causing people to now speculate about how it'll roll out. I said this morning on X that I believe that we will see the UN will be added, the UN will be added to supervised before the robotaxi rolls out. That maybe there's a month lag between those two, that more or less it'll be a case of unsupervised. The company will get a chance to look at millions of miles of unsupervised driving before they actually do start the robotaxi opportunity. What do you think?
I don't know how long the gap will be between internally saying this is done And for that matter, even rolling it out and saying, this is what's going to be unsupervised. You shouldn't need to touch it. But for legal reasons, due to regulations, you still have to be there. You still have to be awake, alert, sober, whatever. So I don't know. I don't know how long the gap will be. I think that's beyond reasonable speculation. And I think anyone who does is unwell, Randy.
Unwell. Well,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean is it could be very quick, and it could be something where you see that they just drag their feet. But I think really Tesla will really want to test out those edge cases in the real world with humans there as a backup, especially since it doesn't cost them anything. All it costs them is, can we recognize the revenue now versus next quarter?
yeah, yeah.
And I've got a video with Matt Smith coming out, I think tomorrow, that discusses that at length. Actually, I guess that one's coming out the day after or the day after. Anyway, it's coming out this week with Matt Smith from Rebellionaire, fellow Lion, and it explains how the revenue recognition will work. And he's of the mind that it's not that much money because of the maybe billion and a half that remains. Not all of that is in the US. So there's
Mm.
also revenue outside the country, and Wall Street will look at that and
As
write
a
it
one
down
time.
a bit as a one-time
Right.
cash. They'll know what it is. So for the first time ever. So it'll just be nice to get that off the books and in the past.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, yeah, the other part of it is for me and everybody else, of course, we're all just impatient to have it start, to have the fun of it be a thing because we've waited so darn long. And then, people are impatient to see the stock go up 100 points because of it. Not that anybody plans that, well, not that everybody plans to sell even a nickel's worth, but I think your reality that you just spoke of in terms of when Tesla recognizes the full FSD is the same story with regard to which month it is or which even year it is or quarter that the Robotaxi rolls out. It's really, you know, it's really kind of a nothing burger at the end of the day, except for the fun that it
It
will
is the
be to
fun.
watch the news.
Well, there's two examples you can look at and tell me which one's more valuable. If the Wright brothers had done their first flight 6 months later, would aviation history be significantly different today? I don't think so. But if Edison had invented the light bulb, his team, not him, of course, had invented the light bulb 6 months or a year later, it's likely someone else would have,
Mm.
because all those teams were on the cusp of it, and maybe we would be talking about someone else instead. So I think both possibilities are valid. Here's what I'm thinking on FSD, and this is also something I discussed with Matt Smith, which is if another company cracks it today, they won't be able to deploy widespread for years. They'll have to say, okay, now it's solved. Now we know what sensors and cameras and whatever. Now we will design a car around it. And it will take them years to get it out. And it is not going to be as affordable as Tesla's approach.
Right.
So I think if Tesla's not the first mover, they'll be so close with such an unstoppable force behind them that it won't matter.
Right. And in addition, if there's a little bit of market share going to other folks, it'll be okay
Yeah,
because the TAM is so large that it will
it's
be, yeah, yeah,
it's fairly large.
very
What
large.
I'm looking forward to for unsupervised, even if it's kind of an informal one, is eyes off the road. Can I look at the screen for more than 1 second? Can I pull up something on YouTube and share it with the gang? Can I, you know, uh, pull out the laptop and do some editing, or, check my email or
Right, right.
whatever it may be?
Yeah, I wonder if we'll even have that kind of level 4 kind of time, or whether it'll go straight from this to sleep in the back seat. It'll be that's another interesting question that will, and one thing I can see, and I'm not sure that I made myself clear a minute ago because I'm sure you got it, but I'm going to just say it again. If they did do that, if they said, okay, now we're going to give you 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you can kind of look away, you can look at your email, whatever, but you'll get nagged after this amount of time, or, some kind of intervening thing. So that could be step one. Now they could use a month to generate lots and lots of data off of the real drivers.
Yeah.
Then they could say, okay, now you can go to sleep in your back seat, but we're still not going to do taxi, but we're
Right.
going to get another month of tons and tons of data off of you real drivers that we will be able to use to make the final decision about Robotaxi.
I think you just nailed it. I did understand before, but I understand that you and I are so deep into the weeds that some people watching may not get it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think you're absolutely right that it will be unsupervised well before it is a licensable robotaxi. Just because it's a big machine and it moves slowly sometimes, and no matter even on the fastest timeline, from valid unsupervised, um, you know, eligible, and you can do unsupervised. Technically, Mercedes does that for brief stretches of very limited roads and in impossible situations. It can happen. So yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. All right.
For once.
I know. I know. Well, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take the once. I mean, it's a tough world out there, and you got to take what you get.
Mhm.
There's a saying about that, and I can't remember. Okay. I think that's all we have for number one today for our Monday version, but we'll do we'll do, we'll do the Tuesday version here in
Mhm.
just a minute. And for those of you who enjoy watching Brian on my channel, you just can't get enough of him just with my channel. He has a channel. Did you know that? He puts
Wow.
out, I think, like 2 videos a day average. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you could all go over to his channel and watch, like an hour of him additionally almost every single day, probably. And then, you might end up putting money in his Patreon. You could possibly decide to subscribe to him and follow him on X. I mean, there's so many ways that you can support Brian's amazing work.
And
I
if you see me in public, you can give me a high five.
a
It's
high.
complimentary.
What if I have a friend that only has 4 fingers? Is he out?
Um, Unfortunately, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
He is restricted to four.
All right. Okay.
20% off, even better deal.
Thank you, Brian. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.